Morning, everybody. I see we got a few people in the morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hello, yeah, I hear you.
Okay, good. At least one person can.
I got you.
Hear you.
One person.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Karen.
Hi, how are you?
Not bad. I see you bouncing around from Minnesota meetings to New Orleans meetings.
I like baseball meetings.
That's true.
Even though I'm a Pirates fan.
Hi, Paul. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Glad you could join us. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me just get my volume up here. Here we go.
Somebody named, they've got two speakers today. Hey,
Well,
hey, Derby, Derby, do you see Terry?
We see his name, don't see his lovely face.
Well, that's on purpose. I'm teasing. Let me see how I get you.
There he is.
Okay, good.
Oh, boy. Hello, gentlemen and ladies.
Now you've done it, you've unleashed it.
I'm sorry, Derby.
You'll get over it.
You guys have fun.
What's up?
Yankees are still in first place.
Yankees
Huh?
are doing great.
That's right.
Mm. Gag me with a spoon.
Gene, you been to New Orleans lately? Gene,
Hey, how you doing? I'm
have
sorry.
you been to New Orleans lately?
Yes, we go every couple of months, to see the kids and visit. So let's see when that was. That was earlier in the year, March, and the kids came up to see us right after July 4th. So we'll go back down September maybe, or maybe October after hurricane season.
Yeah, wait till it gets a lot cooler. So,
Yeah, October's nice.
yeah.
I went there yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Well,
And all that rain.
it's just as hot over in Pass Christian too, though, or Waveland, wherever, right?
Yes, I'm in Waveland. It's very hot.
Yeah.
The best hours to go out are 6 a.m. and 7 p.m.
So Paul, you're in Baltimore today? Is that?
I am. I'm in Baltimore. I'm actually just outside Baltimore. I'm going to be at the Babe Ruth Museum in a couple hours talking about my book.
Hey,
Nice,
Wow.
nice.
I've been there. Very nice place.
I haven't
Very
been there probably in about 10 years. I took my kids there a long time ago and haven't been back since. So I'm looking forward to this.
We went last summer. I had my daughter is a travel nurse and she was in Baltimore at the time.
Beautiful city.
Went to a ball game. I got 4 stadiums left.
Wow. Which ones?
Miami, New York Mets. I don't know why I didn't go see the Mets when I saw the Yankees, but I didn't. And Colorado and LA Angels.
Hmm.
I want to finish with Colorado and LA because the very first major league stadium I went to was Dodger Stadium. So
That brings it full circle.
yes, sir.
Hello, Cal. We see you now. Doing okay. And John, glad you're able to join us. Looks like we may have a light crowd this morning. Derby, did you get any other responses from anybody? I know.
Only one I got was from David Harlan, who said he wasn't set up to do
Okay.
it at home. And then Kyle said he might have to bug out early, but he's on the call. And then nobody else RSVP, since it was Zoom and you registered.
Right.
I don't guess they RSVP'd for me.
Well, I'm sorry we couldn't get the Holiday Inn meeting room like we have done in the past, but it's they're doing some more renovation and changes, and they're messing up the room that we were in, and the other conference room on the top floor wasn't available today. They had some kind of wedding event or something. But
That's the place that your son works at? Your son has something?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's crazy. They've been doing some work there. It seems like for years.
And then but I'm told, he's told me the other day that the Metairie location they're going to try to reopen that now. So maybe if that holds up, we'll maybe next spring we'll be able to go back, go to that location.
Thought they were selling it.
Well, I don't know, that it's been back and forth. So
Yeah, you know.
right now it's try to renovate it. So
I hope they do.
May I say something?
sure.
You just
If
did.
and when we ever meet again in person, I finally finished the 2021 version of Hall of Famers versus Hall of Famers,
All right.
and I will distribute that book at that time.
Nice.
Okay, just to let you know.
Yep.
Well, that's great, but whatever you just did, you knocked out your video.
Did I? I didn't touch anything.
Yeah.
I put the book front of that. I don't know how to do this. Hang on. I put this in front of there and he said I knocked out my video. I don't know what he's talking about.
So Karen, where do you live?
Leland, North Carolina.
Okay, cool. You're back now.
Terry's back.
Yep.
Is that Richard?
That is
Yes.
it.
Hey, Richard, I want to tell you, I love your family.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Really enjoy them.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
We were over by Lee's house a while back, Joey.
Oops, sorry.
Okay. I guess let's go ahead and get started. We may have a few other. I know Brother Neil was going to do a quiz for us, so he had told me he would send it to me ahead of time. So he's probably in progress of trying to get that done. And then I think Rick Dempsey told me he was not going to be able to attend. He had some other conflict, but that was all I heard from. So we may have Brother Neil join in a little bit. So today's agenda, we have 2 guest speakers. Paul, is it Semendinger? Is that?
Mhm. Yes, sir.
and then John Fredland is scheduled to come on a little bit later, and I see he's joined the meeting, but on mute. And so we're gonna have them do presentations and question and answer, and then we had again Brother Neil is going to do a quiz later in the meeting, and that rest of it is open for general discussion and just talk baseball. So Paul, if you want to lead off, go ahead.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I like batting lead off. My book is called The Least Among Them. I'll hold it up right here so you can all see it. It came out in October, and it came out to extremely great critical reviews. In the beginning, I have lots of authors who gave it positive feedback as I was writing it, and National Review listed the book as one of the books to read for 2021. It was published by an independent publisher, Artemisia Publishing out of New Mexico, and it just won the Forward Indies Award as the best sports book of 2021. So I'm honored that it's doing so well. In short, the book is the story of 29 different baseball players who all have one thing in common. They all played for the Yankees for just one day. Their entire career was one day playing for the Yankees. So I figured everybody knows the history of baseball, who cares about baseball, and how it centers around oftentimes the New York Yankees and the great Yankees, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, etc., on through all the years. But no one's ever told the story of the least among them, the guys who were Yankees, who got to put on the uniform, but only got to play one day for the Bronx Bombers. And so through my research, I figured and learned that there were 29 such players. It's really 31. But two of the guys, their last and only game was in 2015. And I didn't want to include them in the book as members of the least among them team, because I have this hope that maybe one or both of them can somehow make a comeback. You never know. In 1970, Jim Bouton obviously played in his last game. And then 8 years later, he famously made a comeback with the Atlanta Braves. And so with that in mind, I said, you know what? I'm not going to make these guys least among them Yankees yet. We'll see maybe if they can't get one last chance to hang on. So those, it's really 31 guys. But I tell the story of 29 of the players and their one day in the big leagues. And well, actually, they might have been in the big leagues for more than one day, but they only played in one game. Because all 29 guys are barely known, if known at all, what I then do is in each chapter, I extrapolate something from the game that took place during that game and tell a bigger story about baseball history, or more specifically, most often Yankees history that comes out of something I learned from that game. And so the first chapter would be about Elvio Jimenez, who played in one game in 1964. That game came against the Cleveland Indians, and one of the players on that Indians team was Tommy John. So in what I call the extra innings part of chapter 1, I tell the story of Tommy John and Tommy John surgery. The next chapter is on Frank Verde, who played for the Yankees in 1953, one inning at shortstop. He went on to be a famous minor league manager, and he was in Cuba playing when there was the Cuban Revolution and gunshots were being fired while he was coaching third base during the game. And so the extra innings in that chapter, I tell about one of my favorite Yankees of all time, Orlando El Duque Hernandez, tying with the Cuban connection, et cetera, et cetera. And I do that throughout each of the 29 chapters, telling the story about the player, and then a bigger story about baseball, or as I say, the Yankees in particular. As I said earlier, Richard brought it up, just a couple hours after this Zoom call, we're going to pack up here in our hotel room and head down into Baltimore, and I'll be speaking and telling the story of this book at the Babe Ruth Museum, which is obviously a big honor. I was going to make this a longer trip and go to Louisville and be at the Louisville Slugger Museum, but the arrangements for that were, it's tough to get speaking gigs and things like that, long distance, and with travel and things like that. I'm in New Jersey. So the idea of getting all the way to Louisville and trying to do that in a weekend and things like that, it just didn't seem like the prudent thing to do. So hopefully next year I'll be able to continue touring and get a little further away than Baltimore. But I've done a lot of book talks at home. libraries, art centers and things like that. I was just in a town called Hawthorne, New Jersey, at a baseball event. They're celebrating Larry Doby this week. And one of the events was to hear about my book. So that's what it's about. I'd love to take questions. I'd love to answer anything you'd like to know about it, tell you more, but I don't want to monopolize too much of your time. So let me just open the floor to the people who are interested in The Least Among Them or Yankees history or anything like that.
So I read your book, and
Thank you.
there are some players that, around the turn of the early turn of the century. So how hard was it finding information about them? Because, if they only played one game, it's not like they get a featured story or whatever. Can you share anything about that?
Absolutely. Baseball Reference is a treasure trove, as you all know, being members of SABR, of information in retro sheet. And most often those two sources are dead on accurate with each other. They have the same exact information, but every now and again, there's a little debate over something that may or may not happen, whether a guy made an error or did he get a hit, especially some of these guys that are lesser known. But primarily in the beginning, my research just came from Baseball Reference and retro sheet and just scouring the internet. One of the guys, Phil Cooney, I believe, the Yankees magazine did a little article about him, probably in the early 1990s. You just start digging and digging and digging and finding these things out. And there's a site called Find a Grave, and you can find the graves of people, which is somewhat morbid, but that's sometimes how you find these guys. And then you make a connection with somebody who knows somebody who knew something about the person. Also, newspapers.com, which is growing and growing and growing, has been just a tremendous resource because, you used to have to travel and go to libraries and look in microfiche and that kind of stuff. And now, if those newspapers are online, you can actually find the newspapers from the day of the game and things like that. But the biggest source outside of Baseball Reference for the research was the Baseball Hall of Fame. And they were just tremendous to me. I went up there twice and spent a couple of days in their library. And when you call them and let them know that you're coming, they actually, and you probably all know this, but since you're in New Orleans, maybe some people haven't been up all the way to Cooperstown. What they do is they actually do the pulling of the articles for you. So I gave them the name of the players that I was going to be researching the day I was coming. They made those arrangements. This was all pre-COVID. And when I got there were a couple other researchers in the reading room there, but they had a file on wheels with all hanging files, and they had a hanging file for every single one of these players. Now, interesting, some of their files were empty. They just had a name. It was just a name on a tab, but nothing in the file. But I found out some great information that way. Actually, one of the guys, Steve Garrison, pitched for the Yankees, probably 2001, something like that. And he pitched against the Mariners. And the only thing in his file was the little card that somebody must have put in there that says Steve Garrison played Major League Baseball and he pitched for the Mariners, but he pitched for the Yankees. It was a mistake. So on that small piece of paper in that one file, somewhere tucked deep in the archives, like at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, that giant building, right, where they put the Ark and those giant crates. Anyway, in one piece of paper, I corrected the official record in the Hall of Fame. So they crossed off the word Seattle Mariners and wrote Yankees. So, so then I went back a couple of years, I guess last summer. I think it was last summer. And when you go to the Hall of Fame now, you have to wear a mask, obviously, or at least I did last summer, and you get the entire room to yourself. So you have to do a little bit more pre-planning. They don't have other people in the room with you while you're there doing your research. But they again pulled all the files for me, and they let you make the copies. They're really just tremendous. They are the nicest people up there. So I wasn't able to get up to the Hall of Fame this summer. I'm hoping to get up to the Hall of Fame either in the fall, maybe the spring, or next summer. Actually, long story short, I play baseball still. I'm a pitcher in over 35 leagues. And my one league plays a tournament in Cooperstown, but I'm not able because of some work obligations to go up this summer. So I'm hoping next summer when we go and play our tournament in Cooperstown, I'll go up. I'm hoping to do a book talk at the Hall of Fame at that time. But the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all my notes and all my research and bring it to the library and put it into all the files so that if anyone ever wants to look up these players again, there'll be some information on all of them.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Out of the 29 players, what was the most interesting one that you found?
Oh, I love that question. You know, they were all interesting, each in their own way. One of the guys' names was Homer Thompson. Now, if you want your kid to play baseball, boy, what better name is it to give him the name than Homer Thompson? Homer played for the Yankees in 1912, but obviously they weren't the Yankees. They were the Highlanders that year. So in 1913, they become the Yankees. So Homer Thompson's only game is the last game the Yankees were ever the Highlanders. But what I really loved about Homer Thompson was the fact that Homer Thompson's brother, Tommy, also played on that 1912 Highlanders team. So I thought it was kind of fun that a brother and another brother got to play. The really cool thing was Tommy Thompson was a pitcher and Homer Thompson was a catcher, but he didn't catch his brother that day, which would have been even a greater story. But there, so many of them have great stories, but that's one that particularly that stands out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you also have a website, Start Spreading the News. Maybe you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. All right. So I'll give you the long, short story. When one wants to become an author, it's obviously, as many of you know, a long and arduous process. And so I've written a novel, I've written a book about a couple of books about motivation, this Yankee book, I have another Yankee book coming, but along the way, oh, there it is. Thank you. Along the way, in order to try to get a name for yourself, you need to have some type of a presence online, and you need to have followers. And so that's my website. It's called Start Spreading the News. When I was pre-published, Start Spreading the News back in 2017 and earlier, used to be known as It's About the Money. And they gave me my start as an online baseball writer. And I would write for that site. And then long story short, basically in September of 2017, It's About the Money said, we don't want to do this anymore. We don't want to blog. It's a pain in the neck. It's a lot of hard work. And it is a lot of hard work. I put out 4 articles a day, every single day. I have a staff of writers. And then we do game threads, a game summary, and a quick hit after every game. So on any given day, there's about 6 to 7 articles that we publish. Anyway, the long story is they said, we don't want to blog anymore. And this was my only chance. This was my only place where people were reading me. So I said, if you're going to shut down the site, can I have it? I'll buy it from you. And they're like, you don't even have to buy it. You can have it. Just change the name. And so we changed the name to Start Spreading the News. And that's been our site ever since. So yeah, as I say, we've had millions. I think we're at 3 million or approaching 3 million views. I can't give you the exact number because we were on Squarespace until probably about March of this year. And then we moved from Squarespace to Wix. And when we moved, we lost some of that data about how many people have come to the site. But when we were on Squarespace as of March, we were approaching 3 million views. So I have to think that since March, we've gotten well over 3 million page views. It's you can see there's a video stream on there. That video player is the exact same video player that like other sites like the New York Post and many other sites have. That's the only way we generate revenue really is they give us a few dollars every month, but I don't do it to make money. And the writers all do it just because they love baseball. They don't get paid. We just do it because we love the Yankees and we love writing about the Yankees. You see up there the 100 most important players in baseball history. Lincoln Mitchell, who has written a number of things about baseball, and especially the San Francisco Giants, just agreed with my publisher, Artemisia Press, to have that published into a book of the 100 most important players. If you're familiar with Joe Posnanski's book, I made that graphic there as sort of a hat tip to Posnanski's 100 greatest players of all time. That won't be the book cover, I'm sure, because it's probably too close to a plagiarized picture, but I just called it that for the blog as a way to, highlight Lincoln Mitchell in his book.
Nice. Any more questions for Paul?
Yeah, I have one.
Get back to the major screen here.
I am a long time, how should I say, disliker of the Yankees, but I commend your effort. That's terrific.
Thank you.
And I'll even look at the site.
Thank you. I will say this. When the Yankees are going bad, obviously the articles tend to get a little bit more negative, but we're never negative. We never criticize. We might criticize a player's performance, but we never criticize people. We're not a site where we, say he's a bad guy or he's a jerk or anything like that. We're not those types of fans. We write from a respectful point of view. I'm an elementary school principal, actually retiring, but after 32 years. But I always stressed and made sure that every article would be appropriate for children to look at. So it's a family-friendly Yankee site, and we're not obnoxious Yankee fans, as a lot of people dislike Yankee fans because they're braggarts and all that kind of stuff. So we try to be very humble when the Yankees win. I think most of us are pessimistic Yankee fans because for Yankee fan, we haven't won a World Series since 2009, and that's an eternity. But I also am grounded because my dad, a lifelong baseball fan, born in 1938, just had his birthday the other day. He's 84 now. Grew up as a Red Sox fan. And he loves the Red Sox. He loves the Red Sox probably more than I love the Yankees, which is amazing. But I grew up loving Ted Williams and Yaz. We'd play Stratomatic, and he'd put out his Red Sox lineup: Remy, Evans, Rice, Yaz, Lansford, Perez, and well, you've got to be somewhat of a humble Yankee fan if your dad's a big Red Sox fan. I don't hate the Red Sox. I love the Red Sox. I love Ted Williams. And in fact, I was lucky enough to be in the Yankee Stadium in 1996 when the Yankees won the World Series, and standing right next to me, just as happy for me, was my dad. So we have a mutual admiration society going on here between the Yankees and the Red Sox.
So there
you go. No Parnell.
In between sessions between Paul and John, I'll insert this one. This was a post I did on Crescent City Sports yesterday, and it's about Mel Parnell, who beat the Yankees 5 times in 1953 with 4 of them shutouts. And of course, the Yankees won the pennant, and the Red Sox were 4th place. About 16 games behind. So his record really didn't matter at the end of the day, but anyway, he's a much loved New Orleans player. I guess one thing I noticed was he is still the winningest left-handed pitcher in Red Sox history, and he is only Cy Young, Roger Clemens, Tim Wakefield have won more games as a Red Sox pitcher.
That's amazing.
Pretty interesting. So
great stuff.
Well, Paul, I may send you this one. See if it's something you want to.
If you'd love it, I'll put that on my site. Absolutely.
Sure.
I would love that. Thank you, Richard.
All right. Let's see.
I have a question.
Thank you, Paul. If you have to drop off at any point.
No. It's all. I think Kyle just said he had a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I know you mentioned that there's a couple of people that you hadn't included in the book because they might come back. Who was in the last couple of players that were the one and done guys?
Yep. So the 2 one and done guys are left-handed pitcher Matt Tracy and Jose Tupola. And as of the writing of the book last summer, Jose Tupola was still pitching in the Mexican League, but I believe Matt Tracy's now coaching in the Toronto organization. So I think his chances of making it are slim to none at this point.
Cool. I'm pulling up their stuff. Oh, okay. So he just stopped right before you finished writing the book. Oh, sweet. He's from my hometown, St. Louis. Look at that.
There you go. See, it's fun stuff.
Cool, man. Yeah, I wanted to look up what was the name of the other guy you said? Jose DePaula. Do you mind spelling that for me?
Yep. Jose DE capital Paula. Jose DePaula.
Oh, just like it sounds. Cool. Thank you, man.
No, thank you.
Pulling them up. Want to look at it.
Okay, John, thanks for joining us. Some of you already probably know that John's one of the leaders in the bio project with SABR, focusing on the games projects. And I've had an opportunity to work with him on several projects, and I was thinking it'd be a good idea to have him talk about that process and just his experience there, and maybe encourage a few more contributors. So
thank you so much. Hey, thank you for having me join you today, everybody.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Paul.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Paul, excuse me, John, you want to start?
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Richard. Glad to be here with the meeting. I am from my couch at my home in San Antonio, and you may hear some noise in the background. I have a wife and infant son who are out. She's pushing him in the stroller now. I have a golden retriever in the background who is a little nervous because my stepson has taken the other dog out for a walk. So you might hear like dogs barking at some point, but we'll try to keep everything under control. And I plan on, in the interest of not exciting the dogs, I will not reference cats, squirrels, or treats in the course of this presentation. I have to watch my language not only around the kids at times, but also around the dogs. You know, I was watching a game a couple of years ago, and somebody hit a home run, and I said, "Get out of here!" And the one dog got excited and kind of like thought that we were going to do stuff. So I have to be careful about that. But hey, I'm John Fredland. I am the chair of the SABR Games Project Research Committee. I have been the chair since late 2020, October 2020. A little background on the Games Project. You may or may not be familiar with it. I know there are a lot of different things that SABR does that people may or may not be familiar with. So just the brief background. The Games Project started in 2014. It's not as old as the Bio Project. The Bio Project, which has kind of a similar background, predated the Games Project by maybe 12 or 13 years. We've been around since 2014. I am the third or fourth chair. I've been in charge, like I said, since 2020. And our mission is to put out and publish articles on baseball games of historical significance. We have a very broad definition of historical significance, which could be anything from like the most obvious games that when you think of what is historically significant, like for example, this week's package of games had Ichiro's 3,000th hit. So obviously that's something that everyone is going to think of as historically significant. But a lot of times people will write articles on, you know, games that maybe like they went to, that was like the first game that they went to. My position is that there's a story in every baseball game that you can tell and bring forward. So if somebody wants to write about like a milestone game, an individual milestone or a significant postseason game, or if somebody wants to write about maybe a game that illustrates a favorite player or team of theirs, or if somebody wants to write about just a game that they enjoyed going to when they were younger, there is room in the Game Project for all of that, and we do our best to get those articles published. I'd say, I think, like, I'm looking at the list of articles that we published this week, which I think kind of reflects the scope of who writes for us and what we do. The scope of articles and hello, my wife and my son have returned home, so hello. And so the articles that we published this week, and the list comes out every week on the Friday Week in SABR email. It spans from a game that was played in June of 1875, June 5th, 1875, but a National Association game between the Boston Red Sox and a St. Louis team that had several different names, you know, Browns and Brown Stockings and things like that. So that game played on June 5th, 1875, all the way up to a game played on October 3rd, 2001. The final centered on it being the final game of Ryan Zimmerman's career. And Ryan Zimmerman's career lasted a long time, but even it did not span the 146 years that our articles span this week. So you have 1875 to 2021, and you have many stops in between. You have, for example, one of the things that we've tried to emphasize is a lot of writing on Black baseball. So two authors did 75 years ago this month, there were 2 Negro Leagues All-Star games. So 2 of our authors, there was one on July 27th in 1947 at Comiskey Park, and one 2 days later in the Polo Grounds. So our authors wrote about those. And those are interesting because July of 1947, you had the first teams integrating in the National and American Leagues, but you also had all these other talented Black baseball players who were still in the Negro National League and Negro American League. So you read through and you see like Dan Bankhead and you see Minnie Minoso and you see people like that. Like looking through, you also have with the Hall of Fame coming up. We tried to emphasize some articles on Hall of Famers. We have one author who's really good at finding good little stories about the minor leagues. And so he wrote an article about David Ortiz when he was known as David Arias, playing in Class A in 1996. So it gets into a very broad spectrum of baseball and what is historically significant. I'd also look at who writes for us. I look at it as, on one hand, you have some people who are very distinguished as writers and members of SABR, like that article from 1875 written by Bob Tiemann, who was the Bob Davids Award winner in 1992. We have articles by Bill Nowlin, who's been a big deal in SABR as a Red Sox historian for years and years. Yeah, but then on the other hand, we have like one author who's had a couple of articles published for us recently is a rising senior in high school. He's really interested in baseball and really interested in baseball history, and we're happy to give somebody like that a forum to write and to be published. Another guy whose article I'm working on, hopefully for the next few weeks, goes to Clemson. He's an undergrad student, and he was inspired to write an article about a game based on, he interned for the baseball team at Clemson, and one of their coaches, a man named Ben Paulson, played for the Rockies for a few years. So he picked a good game that Ben Paulson was involved in 2015 and wrote about it. So one of the things that I really like about the Games Project is that, we're about historical significance and we're about good writing and good research. But to be historically significant, it doesn't have to be, like the Yankees book came up. It doesn't have to be an article about, Babe Ruth. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be, Bob Tiemann or John Thorne or Rob Nyer or someone like that to get posted. You can write about all sorts of different things, and you can be somebody who has, whatever level of experience or background in baseball history. So, that's what I really like. I've enjoyed working with Richard. A lot of people find areas that they like to write about and write articles that are kind of thematic. And for Richard, a big thing is family members. So like he wrote an article about a game when Rick Russell and Paul Russell, and Rick Russell was a favorite of mine as a kid. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and Rick Russell came to the Pirates at a point when it looked like his career was done, and wound up like doing really well and regenerating his career and pitching for several years and being effective. But this was a game in August of 75 when both Russell brothers pitched and the Cubs shut out the Dodgers. So he did that. He did one about the Griffeys. He has one that we're reviewing when all three Alou brothers played in a game for the Giants in 1963. We have other people who have other thematic things. I like one author likes to write about Mets one hitters. The Mets have had an awful lot of one hitters in their history. So he finds, oh, this is where Tom Seaver lost his no hitter in the 9th inning. And then a few weeks later, he'll be, well, this is a game where Tom Seaver lost his no hitter in the 3rd inning, but didn't give up any hits after that. So he has that. Another author likes to write about cycles. So he'll write about somebody hitting for the cycle in 2000 and somebody hitting for the cycle in 1886. So yeah, there are just a lot of different ways that people could contribute. We review the articles, and Richard might point this out as stringently as possible. I review articles when they come in and give feedback from my position of, one, what's a good, well-rounded article on this game, and 2, just I read a lot of baseball books and a lot of things about baseball, and then we fact check the articles. We have a great copy editor who was a newspaper copy editor for over 30 years. He's 91 years old and finds errors in my articles, which I edit pretty thoroughly before they go out, but he's always able to find ways to make them better. And then we post the articles, and then they're out there for the world to enjoy or use as research tools. And, it's something that I've been very happy to be involved with, and encourage you. I know Richard, I think Kyle, I think I saw his name. He's written for us, but yeah, I see a wave there, but yeah, no, we're happy to have involvement. We view this as just a way to get in and get involved in writing about baseball and to contribute. And I guess another thing that Richard did recently that I thought was kind of a cool thing that we can do, and kind of relating to like Paul, the previous presenter, talking about better resources available now. And this is one of the things that I've noticed. I've written about baseball history probably for about 10 years or so, is that the resources available are just getting better and better, with newspapers that are online and more recorded broadcasts available on YouTube. But we came to, Richard had written an article about a player from 1942 who made 4 errors in an inning. And it was the day that his son was born, so he might have been a little bit distracted. So he wrote that story. And I had remembered that another one of our authors wrote an article about Bob Brenly, who was mainly a catcher, playing third base in a game in 1986 and making 4 errors in that game. And the stories are different. The one in 42 was his child was born that day, and the one in 86 was, not everyone can play third base. But the problem was, though, with their articles, the question was, how novel was it? How many people had made 4 errors in an inning? And because they both had different lists of when this had happened. So I asked them to work together to come up with, how many actually were there. And you could look at the 19th century instances a little bit better, probably when some of them were not wearing gloves, where they might have that as an excuse for making their 4 errors. But it turned out that some of these games that were identified as 4 error inning games were actually just 4 errors in a game that all got conflated. And one of the nice things that they were able to do was research all of these and come up with a definitive list, which we now have. So yeah, just a lot of things that are great to be involved in. And I encourage any of you who are interested in writing or research or old baseball games or not so old baseball games to reach out and get involved. Does anyone have any questions?
So John, tell them how to get to the place where you request or register your game, because that might be something you may not be aware of.
Awesome. So we're on SABR.org, and let me see. It's a little, the site is a little slow. I may have reached the point where I have too many windows open. Yeah. as I was also editing people's articles, before this came in. But on the SABR.org site, research collection, there is a games project sub. And if you go there, it has all of our articles, and it also talks about getting involved in the games project. And it's basically who you reach out to, like my email's on there. Steve Weiner is kind of a deputy figure where he's involved in like managing our historic list of who is assigned games. Because if you want to request a game, we only want one article on a given game. So if you want to write about a game, we have to make sure that nobody has written about it before. And one of the things that makes it a little bit challenging is that sometimes articles are reserved for books, and those books might take a couple of years to be published, and then it might take a couple of years. Like eventually, everything that's in a book gets posted on SABR.org's research collection, but that might take a little bit longer as well. So like, for example, we're working on, like you mentioned, the Yankees. And I think this is like a white whale among SABR, a book on Yankee Stadium. You know, SABR does a lot of books on things, and some are more manageable topics than others. But if you want to look at a book on all the great things that have happened at Yankee Stadium, that might be an awfully long and unmanageable book. So they're kind of working on winnowing down, okay, what's the essence of how can you get a good book about Yankee Stadium? Because even if you talk about Yankee Stadium as in like the house that Ruth built and was remodeled, that's 1923 through, what was it, 2008 or whenever. And you know, that's a lot of stuff. So that's a book that's in the works, and when that book comes out a couple of years from now, then those articles will go up a year after that. So it'll be a while. But yeah, if you go to SABR.org, it has my email address, it has Steve Weiner's email address, and if you reach out to us to let us know that you're interested, and you know, then we can set you up with the particulars.
Right. You know, what I found working with John and the team is he mentioned this, the availability of the people who help out. I mean, Tom Ruane that manages the retro sheet. I've contacted him several times and said, in your database, can you find me these players that these brothers that pitch together or whatever? And boy, usually in a day, he's got the answer for you. And it's like, you never would find that anywhere else. And like you said, the collaboration between all the team members in the process is really super. So don't feel like, well, I don't know where to go, where to get help. There's always somebody that you can reach out to, or somebody can point you to somebody who can help. And
that's good. One of the things that I like about working for SABR in this capacity is that, you know, SABR is a very well-known and respected organization among baseball historians, many of which are members of our organization. But if you say you're from SABR, or if we're writing something that has the SABR stamp, you know, people, there is some credibility there. And I found that it makes it easier to either we have subject matter experts in-house. And one of the things that I do is I try to identify like who has expertise, and I try to get them to read articles, you know, because I can just kind of read things as the general fan. But if I have Bill Nowlin, who's written, you know, thousands of words on Red Sox history over the years, you know, he's not a bad person to have to look at if you've written an article on the Red Sox. Or Jim Overmeyer, who's written some very well-regarded Black baseball history books. I always have him, and he'll find, like, some of those resources can be tricky to find, but if you've done research on the level that he's done, you know, he has some ideas about research that the rest of us might not have. Or even like with me, like I've had to find a lot of resources to help people. So I'm always like, well, you know, there's actually a YouTube video that has the Sports Center highlights of this game. So if you want to see what that home run looked like, you know, you can describe it a little bit more than maybe what you have. So yeah, no, there are a lot of people are willing to work with us. I mean, I've even emailed John Thorne with questions about these articles, and I mean, yeah, I mean, he's a tough kid. John Thorne has a lot going on, and so you don't just want to, you know, like write him with, you know, silly questions. But you know, it's like if he knows who you are and you approach him, you know, you can get some very high level expertise. So yeah, we have a lot of resources I view it as like we're a recording studio, and if you come down and you can keep a tune, we can send you home with a record. We might be Sun Studios in the old days, and maybe you'll show up as Elvis Presley wanting to record for your mother, and you'll go on to be, the king. But at the very least, we will do what we can do to make your article stand alongside everything else in SABR, with the same level of quality.
I have a question.
Thank you for that.
Oh yes, Gene. Another good to see you. Gene has written. Oh, what was it? 1985 Tigers.
Yes, good memory. Yeah.
Recording that he had.
Yes. So I had an old VHS recording of this game from 1985. Being a Yankees fan, a really strong Yankees fan. Anyway, Guidry pitched this masterful game, and I was going through my old VHS tapes and getting rid of a bunch of them. But I had to save this one. I don't know why. I just saved it. So turns out I know what I can do with it. I can go look at this and do a game project game from this tape. Turns out I really didn't have that much, not a complete game by any means. I just had a certain number of innings, but it was enough for me to use because it was the NBC game of the week with Vin Scully, Joe Garagiola. They just fired Yogi Berra 16 games into the season. It was pretty cool to write about it, but just that was fun, really fun to do. So I'm impressed that you remembered that game from. And I noticed it was you. I think you emailed me and mentioned that that game was put up on YouTube.
Yes.
But the volume you couldn't hear it. The first few innings you could hear it, but the last half of the game the volume was so low that it was almost imperceptible. So, but it was still fun to see that game again. To see it actually more than what I had on my tape.
Now that's a tremendous resource. There aren't many games that are recorded from those years, and there are just things that you can pick up from recordings. I mean, one thing that I do is if it's a pre-1988 game, I try to do a pitch count because we're all like nowadays you watch on TV and what the pitch counts are and everyone's counting down to 100 pitches or whatever. And when they take the guy out and, there might be an assumption going on that in the old days, they threw 140 pitches every game or whatever. And it's kind of neat to see, well, sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't. I mean, sometimes, like I did John Candelaria's no hitter in 1976 and he got through it on 101 pitches and Doug Rowell of the Dodgers threw even fewer pitches to get, or like on a pitch per inning basis. It's like, no, I mean, sometimes there was a lot more pitching to contact, but those are the sorts of things that like recordings will bring you.
I'd just like to add maybe one more little thing.
Yes.
Our chapter did a tutorial on the game project, doing a game project game. And we did a tutorial for one of our chapter meetings. It was a 20-minute thing with the PowerPoint. It was pretty cool. So I just wanted to say that then in the process of putting that together, we went step by step. I just wanted to encourage anybody out there that hasn't done a game is that when you do that, you all are so helpful in being editors and in your suggestions, and you're almost training a person how to write. So it's a chance to be a sports writer, you just writing maybe 1,500 words at the most. I think that's the current limit. But boy, you really learn a lot from the suggestions you guys returning the text to us. And anyway, I just want to mention that don't be feeling that it's a daunting task to do the game because you all are so helpful.
Thank you. I know it's because a lot of it is, I mean, I read, good sports writing ever since I was a kid. I was a lawyer in the Air Force for 20 years. And a lot of that was like, how do you present facts? Sometimes it had to be to a jury and sometimes it had to be to a commander and sometimes it had to be to the general public. And so a lot of like, what's the best way to present something where you can be truthful and you can tell a story, a lot of that kind of goes back to that. But no, thank you. I enjoyed working with you on that. And especially like that's like one of the great things about the Games Project is like we're interested in everything. Like a game from 1875 and a game from 2021, we're going to treat it the same way. But 1985, I was 10. I turned 11 during that season. So that was kind of a fun one for me because I remember like the drama of the 85 Yankees really well.
Right.
Any other questions?
All right. Thank you, John. I really appreciate you spending time with us. And
You're very welcome. Oh, and then another thing that I'd throw in is we are not limited to major league games. I had mentioned like Kurt Blumenau writes about a lot of minor league games, and a few other authors do. We have some college games, kind of an interesting quirk, and I know this is probably more LSU territory. One of my authors, his son pitched for the University of Arkansas baseball team and pitched in the College World Series. So he wrote an article about it, and I have it, and it's kind of interesting. I mean, I have a few other articles about college baseball, but it's like about his son pitching in the College World Series, and we're open to a lot of different pitches. We've had international games. One of our members is an official scorer by trade. Like he's the scorer. Stu Thornley's the scorer for the Twins, but he also scored a pool in the 2017 World Baseball Classic in Mexico. So he wrote about all those games, and there's some aspects of like being an official scorer for that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean we're open to a lot of different things, and here to work with you.
you also have the women's the women's league
Yes.
team from the 40s and 50s. Yeah.
Oh yes. Gary Belleville did some great work with those. We're very happy with those.
Okay. Thanks again. For if you want to hang on, that's fine. If you want to dismiss yourself, that's fine too. So
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and have a great weekend, everyone.
thank you again.
Thanks, John.
One of the things I wanted to cover was I saw a presentation last night from a person who's in charge of the let me find it. Hang on. He's in charge of a new project that SABR's doing, where they have created a baseball landmarks database. And this is pretty neat. I think this has a lot of potential because it would be available to people in general. They don't have to be a SABR member, but there's they've done some initial collection of baseball landmarks, which are things like museums, stadiums, statues, road markers, all kinds of things. And so they did a presentation. I think it's now available. It's generally available on the SABR website. But for example, there's a few features I know how to use, so I'll try to see if I can do that. Each of those little pins matches a landmark. And then in the case of in Louisiana, I hope you can see this. They had three landmarks that were noted. One was Superdome. One was Barrow Stadium, and then one was also the Heinemann Park Pelican Stadium, and then there was one the Mellot Park over in Gretna. So if you click on one of these, I'll just hope you can see this. It gives you a little description of what the site is, when it opened, what type of landmark, with whether it's ballpark or whatever, and then it has the ability to do has photos of the site. And in this case, I think you can, in this case, is you're looking inside the side of the Superdome. There's also pictures that you can of the facility or the landmark outside the site. Let me go back here. Excuse me again. I'm not too adept yet at this, but let me see if I can go back to the map. You can sort on all of these categories of ballparks, whether it's collegiate, affiliated teams, independent, major league, spring training, winter league. There's grave sites, there's markers, movie locations, murals, any whatever. So you can click on one of these and say a grave site and let me see if I can get that. Come on. I'm not having. Let me see how to get that. I'm not having any luck with getting back to where I was. Anyway, I won't take up your time trying to mess around with this, but go out there and take a look at it. It's one of the neat features is you can from your current location, you can say, what's the closest site landmark to me, and you might find Melott Park in Gretna, and you can say, well, find me the directions. So it uses Google Maps to then give you the directions to go to that site. You can they did a demonstration last night where a person was planning a trip from somewhere in Illinois to Cooperstown, and he wanted to see all the landmarks along the route to from those two cities, and you're able to pin the sites that you want along the route, and it'll adjust it to the sites that you wanted to attend, and gave you a map, step-by-step instructions on how to get to all those. So it's pretty cool, and the database has been built, and some of the pictures aren't available, and there's a few things that are missing, and they're still doing a lot of validation. But you can even now, if there's a site that you think you should be included, you can submit there's a process where you can submit a site, and they'll kind of register it, and then you can go provide all the information, the GPS coordinates, pictures, photographs, whatever. So again, I apologize for not being able to make this work any better, but it's a pretty neat tool, and I think I believe maybe the SABR weekly email had some references to it as well. If you go back to that, they're sent out on Fridays. Okay, again, I just mentioned that. Okay, any other just general discussion? If anybody has a topic or?
I had a fun story to tell y'all.
Sure.
I forgot about it, but you guys were talking about 1985, and it reminded me. A couple of months ago, a lady hired me to put a band together for her son's graduation party, and they were from Ohio, and she was like, "Oh, do you like Joe Burrow? Everybody knows who that is, right?" And I said, "Kinda, but I really like Joey Votto a lot more." And she was like, "Oh, you like baseball?" And I said, "Yes, I love baseball." And she's like, "Oh, well, my husband used to play baseball." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And so she's married to this guy, and I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, where are you from?" I'm like, "Oh, St. Louis." She's like, "Oh yeah, he played on the '85 Cardinals." I'm like, "What is going on right now?" So we ended up meeting, and it was the guy Ivan De Jesus, who I kind of knew the name. He also had a son who played in the big leagues, but him and I got to spend a few minutes together chatting, and it was cool. He looked great. I think he's like 69, 70 years old. He looked really good. The first thing I asked him about was Don Dinkinger, and I swear he didn't know who that was. Like that, you just look somebody in the eye and you say something to him and you just have a feel. I swear he didn't know who that was. And I think he was kind of like a bit player for the '85 Cardinals.
Right.
But then I learned afterwards he was the guy that the Cubs traded for Ryan Sandberg to the Phillies. Just a bunch of fun little things that I learned all just from this lady that hired me. And I called my dad and told him about it that night. He's like, oh man, he's like, are you still in that baseball group? I was like, oh yeah. He's like, oh, they're gonna love that story. You know, just silly little stuff, man. And yeah, just all kind of because I didn't care about Joe Burrow, which I don't mean to offend anyone. But yeah, it was just a fun little story. I'm glad y'all were talking about the 1985 season because I had totally spaced it.
Let me tag on to your story. I wrote the biography for Ivan de Jesus, and I talked to him several times, and he was a great help with his biography, and it was.
Oh, no kidding! Yeah,
yeah.
he was cool.
Really nice guy. Yeah, so very, very helpful.
You wrote his SABR biography. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yeah. It was.
Oh, sweet. I'll check that out.
Part of a.
That's a coincidence. That's a coincidence.
Yeah. It was,
Yeah.
I think it was for the book on Puerto Rican players. Yeah. So.
Yeah, he had a great career. Led the league in runs one year. I mean, he had a great career.
Good player for a while. Yeah.
I have something, Richard.
Okay.
Brother Neil, I have something.
Go ahead.
Have I got my camera on? Yes. There's going to be some big changes in Major League Baseball next year, and maybe some more again in 2024. Sport has been struggling. 3 or 4 years ago, there was a poll that asked people, what is your favorite sport? And the average age of people who said baseball was their favorite sport was about 58. And that doesn't bode well for the future. So first thing they're going to do is have a totally new schedule system, which I kind of like, but basically you're going to play every other team in both leagues every year. And the idea of that is that great players like Trout and Harper and Ohtani and so on, you'll see them once every 2 years, as opposed to if you're in the National League, you never see certain great players unless that happens to be the year when your team plays an interleague game with them. So you're going to play you're still going to play more games against your division. My first reaction when I heard about it was, well, if you're going to play everybody, then why even have divisions? But you are going to play your division teams more often. You're going to play them 14 times within your division. And then you're going to play each of the other teams in your league 10 times each. And then the new one is you're going to play every team in the other league 3 times, 3 games. And but your natural rival, I guess they're talking about the Yankees, Mets, White Sox, Cubs, and so on, you play them 4, and that all adds up to 162 games again. So that's why, if you play the Angels 1 year on the road, well, the next year you'll play them at home, and that's why they say you'll see all the good players every 2 years. From what I understand, that is going into effect. That doesn't need any more approval or anything. The ones for 2024 are much more controversial, probably. They want to employ a pitch clock. College baseball is doing this, and you have 14 seconds to make the next pitch with the bases empty, and 19 seconds if they're men on base. They also will have a batter warning, because many cases they always talk about slow pitches, but the batters are got to step out every pitch, straighten out your gloves, switch your shoulder, get rid of all that nonsense. and there'd be batter warnings, which college is also doing. And then the one that for 2024, that will be probably very controversial is, and these still need approval, is to go to the automatic balls and strikes, which I guess the home plate umpire will have a buzzer or something in his hand, and if it turns red or buzzes, it's a strike. I don't know exactly how they're going to do it. So I was just wondering about everybody's reaction to all of that, and whether you like it or don't like it, or have other things you'd like to see happen.
I think the minors are using the pitch clock now.
Yes.
I've heard it. It's dramatically reduced the amount of time on games. You know,
They say it's taken about 28 minutes of time off of each game.
Yep.
And there's a couple of other things that are in the hopper too. They want to put a ban on infield shifts. Again, this wouldn't be, this they want next year. Teams will no longer be allowed to have more than 2 infielders on one side of second base. Says opening the field puts a premium on athleticism and incentivizes hitters to put the ball in play. They also want a maximum depth for outfielders. Says still in the planning stage, it may be tried in extended spring games this coming year, perhaps defined by a green arc painted on the grass. That's a lot. And I don't know where the Players Association comes in there, and if they have to have any approval or the owners can do it unilaterally. I guess that if there's a contract coming up, that'll probably all have to be negotiated and put into the contract.
I think somebody might be able to correct me on this, but I think with part of that new collective bargaining agreement that we just dealt with over the lockout, I think like any of those proposed changes, the commissioner can propose them, try to have it be agreed upon, but then the next season he can just do it whether or not the Players Association agrees. I think it's something like that, to where like he wants them to buy in and he wants to work it out, but ultimately he can do it regardless.
Yeah.
The outfield thing, everybody knows Jason Stark, the writer.
Yes.
He's as far as the stuff that I read, he's very much the one on top of all these rule changes, and he has Theo Epstein on his podcast like once a year to talk about the state of baseball, and a lot of these rules changes are kind of being led by Theo. And he talked about the outfield one, like the outfielders are taking away way more hits than the infielders are. Like the outfielders, the positioning of the outfielders, like why we don't see more triples, more doubles. So much of that has to do with that the outfielders are being placed so well now. And I never thought about that. I'd always just thought about the infield stuff. But I could totally see how regimenting where the outfielders can play could really open things up again, maybe even more so than the infield.
In my opinion, first half of my life, I would have said baseball was my favorite sport, but football, college, and pro have long eclipsed it. I would say that it's all whistling in the dark if you don't have, why is the NFL the greatest and richest league in the whole world? I say it's because they have a hard salary cap. Look at the Saints. They had to give up certain good players because they couldn't go over the salary cap. The Major League Baseball Players Association was the first one, and they are still the strongest. They probably would never agree to that. And I think as long as that's the case, baseball is going to be second rate because I looked it up. I'm a Cardinal fan, and I looked it up. And the Dodgers, they played the Dodgers right before the All-Star break. The Dodgers payroll is $79 million more than the Cardinals. Unless you do something about that, all the other stuff is cosmetic. And the teams that can't afford it, that don't have the market, every once in a while they'll be able to get in there. But teams can stockpile the players, and there's this tax you have to pay if you go over a certain amount. Well, George Steinbrenner started with that. He mocked it, and it didn't make any difference to him that he had to pay a certain amount because it was worth it to stockpile the players. But these other things can help. I'm not denying that.
How did y'all like the change of subject a little bit? The All-Star game with the mic'd up pitchers and catchers. I thought that was pretty interesting, and I was fascinated between the two Yankee players that were. It kept my interest more than just trying to wander off and think about something else while watching the game. Trying to having a dialogue about, okay, what's next, and no, I don't agree with that, and I'm coming sidearm. Watch for that, and I wish they could do that for every game. I mean, I know it's probably not possible from a technology standpoint to keep all of that, secured, but I enjoyed that part of the, and I think that would interest a lot more people who may be more just casual, watch a game every once in a while, because you got some real insights into what these guys were thinking, what they were doing, and I thought it was pretty neat.
Is it ESPN that that has a player with a mic for one inning?
Yeah, I think
Either
so.
he's off the field or
Right.
he's on the field. And so they do that. Of course, obviously,
Right.
on the risk that they had the left fielder recently, thinking the Red Sox, the left fielder, and you got to watch out that he's distracted by talking to you, and here comes a ball at him.
But I don't know if you saw it. At one point, the pitcher asked John Smoltz, the broadcaster, "So what pitch would you go with here?" And Smoltz told him, and he threw that pitch, and it was like pretty good.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at the infielders that are doing that stuff, let alone the pitchers that like trying to do that stuff and then actually play the ball game, like Brother Neil was saying. I feel like the outfield is a nice place for the microphones. Yeah, I get why they don't do it, but it is so fun when they do. I love it. I don't know anybody that doesn't. I guess I know one person that doesn't like it, but they like it in the exhibitions. They just don't like it in the regular season games.
They will also talk to the managers one inning or, during the game and get the update from them. But of course, the manager's just in the dugout. He doesn't have to be ready for a ball hit to him. But it does give you a little more insight, and rather than wait till after the game to say, why did he change pitchers?
See, I think that has the potential to speed up the game too. Again, between the time the catcher throws a signal, the pitcher interprets it, they shake each other off. It's an immediate discussion, and he can, they can challenge each other. Hey, why you want to throw that? Or, let's do this pitch. And it just save a lot of time, I think, as well.
I forgot to mention also that they're going to have bigger bases, slightly bigger bases. It shortens the distance between bases by 4.5 inches. First base is a little bit larger, and second base is a little bit larger than how many times has the guy been caught stealing at second base by a split second? Well, maybe now some of those times he'll actually make it in. And again, that'll hopefully add more runs. And
Did you guys see that thing where they're also going to like move second base a little bit closer to home plate?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I can't quite speak to what it was, but it's something about the dimensions second base has always not actually been 90 feet or something like that. It was something about the way that the first and third base, you know, how if this is the baseline, the base goes around, it's on both sides of the line, it's not on the edge of the line. And there's something about that, how that ended up making second base further away from home plate than it would normally be. I think that was going to help shave some inches off as well.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that they're trying this stuff. I mean, I never thought I'd be fine with taking away the shift, but at this point, yeah, let's see what happens. Weren't they doing the pitch clock in like for the Zephyrs and the baby cakes before they left?
No, I don't think so.
I could have swore there was a pitch clock there.
They definitely have it in college baseball.
Yeah,
See-
I could be wrong, and I'm probably wrong, but I could have swore I
Seems
saw
like
a
the,
pitch clock back then.
Seems like the system that they're using between pitcher and catcher to do the signals electronically, that seems, there was some skepticism about how popular that would be, but apparently that's caught on quite a bit. You know, at
Definitely
Tulane,
great for watching the games.
at Tulane Stadium, they have a number over the dugout. It's a random generated number, but it has each number out of 5 numbers has a significance. So the pitcher just looks over there to get the signal, and the catcher, of course, everybody on the field can see what the pitch is going to be. And I thought that was pretty cool.
I don't think pro ball players will agree with that. They are using the communication system, you know. And
Some of them said they like the pitch com because the little pad that they're typing in, you can be a lot more specific with where you want the pitch than just using the finger. That's kind of cool. But I don't think they have them in every language yet. I know that's one problem. At least that was how it was at the beginning of the season.
I haven't heard, does anybody know what's happening with the runner on second base in extra innings? Is that now permanent, or? That to me has always struck me as very artificial. The shift to some extent struck me that way too, but that one is even more so. Because you followed one set of rules for 9 innings and all of a sudden you change it.
Yeah, but now you get a whole new statistic for walk-off, lead-off, 2-run home runs.
Yeah. We had the first one
Pitcher
earlier this
taking
year.
a loss. Yeah, pitchers taking losses without giving up any base runners or hits. Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, ground
I
out.
haven't heard anything about them taking about that. I haven't heard them anything talking about taking that away. Seems like the players like it. It seems like the only people that don't like it are the fans.
But supposedly these changes are meant to please the fans. It increased the number of fans.
Well, it increases scoring.
Yeah, that's the main objective in all of this, I think. Well, the main objective is to shorten the games and get more action and the more runs.
I like the schedule changes. Right now, I think they play too many intra-divisional games, 19 each team. That's a lot.
There was an article that I was reading a while back talking about how the teams in the American League East should love the new schedule, because you had several times in the last couple of years, you had a team finish that had 100 or more victories and finished third in the American League East and didn't make the playoffs for that reason, because they couldn't be the wild card, because they weren't the second place team. In other words, the division already had 2 teams in the playoffs, so that knocked them out. And so playing them less, and of course, if you beat each other up, you may not get that wild card. You may lose out to another division where they 2 of the teams mopped up on the division and got got it ahead of you. And again, the whole playoff setup with how many teams are going to make it, how many wild cards, that, changed for this year with what, 12 in each league. Again, that's trying to get away from the idea that, there were so many franchises that by mid-June, forget it, we got no chance. And even if we had a star player who was injured and now will be coming back, so we should do better by the All-Star by this time of the season, we're dead. We got no chance. But that's always going to happen to some extent, but all you can do is reduce that.
How about the SEC West baseball teams going all the way to Omaha this year? It's almost like the American League East in Major Leagues.
Right.
Baseball. SEC West was brutal.
Yes.
Ole Miss was what, 4th or 5th, and they won the title.
Right. They got hot at the right time, boy, I tell you.
So yeah, and Mississippi State won. So Mississippi State had never won baseball. In fact, had never won any NCAA championship in the whole history of the university. And then they won the baseball championship last year. And now on the very next year, you would have thought, well, they sucked out all the talent in Mississippi. No, Ole Miss comes back the next year and wins it for the first time.
I think State had barely had a winning record. I mean, they were pretty bad this year.
Well, you often have a junior, senior dominated team, and you lose your players, to the major leagues and to graduation, and you can go down real fast in baseball, especially if they're pitchers.
Well, this guy at LSU, the new coach, is accumulating a bunch of players from, I guess you can say, he's doing it through the portal process.
Yeah, what's going on with that? I heard a thing on a major league podcast I was listening to yesterday, and they had a prospect guy on. He's like, yeah, so and so is transferring to LSU just like everyone else.
Yeah, he's picking
What's up with that?
He picked up what, 4 or 5 new players, and these are like top players. These are not somebody else's second team players.
Do you have to sit out a year when you transfer, or how does that work?
No.
You can transfer once and not sit out. If you do it a second time, you have to sit out. It's called the transfer portal.
Then he went. Yeah. Then the coach went and hired the Minnesota Twins pitching coach.
Yes, in the middle of the season. That got a lot of
or something like
controversy and people condemning him for leaving his club in the middle of the season. Well, imagine now what LSU must be able to pay the pitching coach to make him leave a major league team.
Yeah, he got a raise.
You talk about the dominance of the SEC. Well, that's it. You got all of these leagues now with the expansions of them. All of sports, in my opinion, is just undergoing change after change that makes your mind boggle. From the major leagues, pro sports to college, and
I heard one guy say that we'll just have 2 football leagues, ESPN and Fox, and we should just name them ESPN and Fox, because that's how they're lining up with the 2 major conferences.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I had another thing here I wanted to share with you. The book that I found. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Can you see this one? Can you see this?
No.
No.
Let me try again here. I don't know, for some reason I can't navigate. Well, I was just going to show you the book cover, but it's the book is titled American Legion Baseball, a history 1924 to 2020. And if you're familiar with local New Orleans teams, they dominated a lot in the American Legion World Series over the years, particularly early in the days of the 20s to 30s and some in the 40s. And so it's a very detailed description of the primarily focused on the World Series tournaments and who the players were and who the teams were. If it's something you're interested in, that it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's got a lot of interesting detail in there, and of course they highlight the players that that wind up going over to playing in the major leagues or playing college baseball or whatever. But at one point, I think it was in the 1935, let me see, maybe it was 35, 36. The author made the point, says, well, finally, there's another team from the South other than New Orleans that's dominating baseball. And so it was.
That reminds me of an interesting story about American League Legion baseball that I read some years back. In New Orleans teams, back in the early 60s, the Jesuit American Legion team went all the way to the finals. And in the final game, they were playing against a team from North or South Dakota. And the pitcher for that team was some guy named Dave McNally, who I think turned out to be pretty good. So the Jesuit was obviously the underdog, but they figured out that the catcher was tipping the pitches the way he lined up. And so they started to have a signal to the batter, if it's going to be a curve or a fastball. And so they pounded McNally and knocked him out of the line. And McNally started to wonder, what am I doing? I must be tipping the pitches. They suddenly are hitting me. So he gets, that will mess you up. You're too conscious of all of this and you can't pitch naturally. So they knock him out of the box and go on to win the game. And he didn't find out till later that it was the catcher.
McNally was undefeated that year going into the World Series. That was the year Rusty Staub and Pat Green and those guys, Chuck Staub played in that team.
And I'll just add that Rusty Staub was 0-1 against me in North. That's all I'll say.
All right, mark it down.
You'd have sacrificed fly.
That's cool. All right. Anything else? If not, maybe I think we'll try to see if we can switch to the quiz.
Yeah.
Let me try to see if I can get this right.
Everyone can just, if there's going to be an attachment sent to you, and everyone can just call it up on your screen. And we'll give you about 10 to 12 minutes to, there's 15 questions. And then we'll go through the answers. You'll be on the honor system correcting your own paper.
Right. Is this showing on the screen now?
No.
No? I don't know why. What?
Showing on mine.
Pardon me?
It's showing on mine.
Yeah, you haven't opened the quiz yet.
Link.
But
It's the Word document.
send it as an attachment to everybody.
Okay.
You
The Word document's not showing.
download it and then attach it to an email back to everybody else.
All right. I don't know why I'm having such trouble with sharing.
Or you can just open it up on your screen and everybody can see it off of.
Well, that's what I was trying to do.
They don't know how to do it. I sure as I don't.
Can do you have it open, Brother Neil?
No.
I was gonna say maybe you could figure out how to make it share. I don't know why I can't.
I have it on the desktop computer. Let me see if I can put it
While
on.
you're waiting, I do have a couple of stories. I was in Tampa last month.
Okay.
And talking about historical markers, I found that I located the historical marker for Babe Ruth's longest home run.
Oh.
587 feet against the New York Giants and on the University of Tampa campus.
Don't know. It's not up on his name.
It's awesome.
Oh, well, that's Kyle. I don't know who the other guy.
It's James McDonald.
Oh, there.
I was talking while we're waiting.
Go ahead.
And I went to a Rays game against the Cardinals in Tropicana Field. The Cardinal fans completely outnumbered the Rays fans.
That was a rough series.
Yeah, it was. But the hockey team was was also in town in the NHL semifinals. So, but between innings, with Kiss Cam and Muscle Cam and all that, they managed to make it seem as if there wasn't a Cardinal fan in the stadium. They had to kind of show some fans 2 and 3 times to do that, but they managed to do that. What's up?
Were you able to see it there?
Yes.
Yeah.
If I can maximize this, make it bigger.
Had you been to an indoor baseball game before?
Yeah, I've been to the Astrodome, Bank One the old Bank One ballpark when the roof was closed. Kingdome, the Metrodome. I've seen it. Right, it's kind of like watching baseball in someone's living room.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I only did the in 2019. I did the Astros Minute Maid Park. That was my first indoor baseball game. Definitely different. Let's see here. I'm trying to map this quiz out.
Okay, I have a version of this on. I think it's available now. We want to let's, like I said, maybe take 5 or 10 minutes or so and go through and record your answers, and then Brother Neil can give us the answers at the end. I'll have to scroll I'll have to scroll down once we get after you've seen the first 6 or 7.
Oh my God.
Stuff.
So number 4 is just basically saying multiple MVP winners.
Yes.
Who didn't do it?
Right. That's what I'm saying. But I'm just making sure it's basically who on there has less than 2.
I'm gonna scroll down a little bit.
That's a good one. Hmm.
Can I scroll down some more? A few more?
That's a good question.
Does anybody need to go back up, look at a previous question that's been showing?
I did, I don't know the answers to some of them, but I did it.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Is everybody finished?
Yes, sir.
Anybody need more time? Answer now. All right, we'll go back
30
up.
seconds more for me.
Yeah, scroll back up because I want to go through them.
Okay.
Beginning. All right. So the team that the A's did not beat was the Pirates. Feel free to cheer, raise your hand, touchdown signal, whatever you got it right, or just be quiet until the end. Number two, the Hall of Fame members as players who won pennants. Casey Stengel, he was in the Hall of Fame as a manager, not a player. That's why I emphasize the word player. Number three, Buck Showalter is a manager of the Mets, which is not an American League team.
Well, you got another one there. Joe Madden is currently not managing. He got fired. Right?
Oh, that's right. True.
Right.
Get partial credit, right?
He lost 20 in a row.
Players who won the MVP award in either league more than once. Orlando Cepeda won it only once.
Juan Gonzalez won 2 MVPs. That is insane.
5, the commissioners of baseball. Van Johnson was not the commissioner of baseball. He was
It was just the American League.
American League. Of course, most famously at the time of the 1919 Black Sox scandal when he was in the middle of trying to figure out what they were doing and giving orders and so forth.
Man, I remembered his name. I didn't pick him. I remembered his name from one of the SABR game projects I did. But as soon as you said that, dang it, I forgot they didn't have a commissioner then.
Right. As a result of that, they created the office of commissioner. And who was the first commissioner, gang?
And
Landis.
Landis.
Nassau Mountain Landis, yeah. Judge.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Number 6, the player who holds the record for most home runs, Mickey Mantle, at 18. Of course, you have to play in a lot of World Series to get that record. Number 7, the longest game is 26 innings. 1920, Boston versus Brooklyn. Both starting pitchers went the whole way, apropos of what we were talking about earlier with changes in the game. And the game was finally called by darkness, tied at 1-1. Boy, that's a lot of hitting, isn't it? That was right about, that was the first year of the so-called livelier ball and the spitball being eliminated and mud ball and all the things that they did with it. Number 8, the oldest park, the third oldest, is Dodger Stadium from 1962.
Right.
Scroll a bit now. All right, the team that moved, an old team that moved for number 9 was the Minnesota Twins. The Angels were one of the new teams. The Athletics moved later, and the Mariners were a new team later on. So the team that changed franchises was name was Minnesota. Number 10, the American League Most Valuable, Shohei Ohtani, the nearest thing to Babe Ruth that we've ever had, probably. Number 11, you should have got that if you've been on my website anytime recently. That was Satchel Paige, 59 years old, pitched basically a stunt game for Finley, the athletics coach, when they were still in Kansas City.
How old was he?
59.
Didn't Minnie Minoso
pitch three scoreless innings?
He had a rocking chair in the bullpen.
The Minnie Minoso was, I think, 56 or 7.
Right.
I think. He kind of did the same thing at a later date. Yeah. The Milwaukee Brewers won the National League Central. Number 13 is interesting. Anybody want to give that answer before I give it? Remember who that was? What?
Dizzy Dean?
No.
I guess that's
Pitched a lot after the 19. Yeah, I thought people would go with Dizzy Dean. A 1937 World Series, he got hit on the toe in about the third inning, right before due to leave the game anyway, and broke his toe, and that caused him to alter his motion and hurt his arm. But he went on to pitch a number of games. In fact, he pitched a entire season for the Cubs in 38. It was in the World Series with the Yankees, but they lost his fastball. No, it was a guy named J.R. Richard of the Houston Astros in 1980, because shortly after that, after he pitched one more game, he had a stroke due to a blood clot, nearly died, and never did, was not capable to pitch anymore after that. It was one of the, you hear things about Herb Score, the pitcher getting hit in the eye and never being the same, and other things like that. That was his tragedy. Number 14 was interesting. Anybody think they have that one?
I had that one. I'm going to guess.
Who is it? There's a couple of things come together there in that one. The answer is Babe Ruth. Because when 1918, when he was with the Red Sox, they played the Cubs in the World Series. And in order to get bigger attendance and more money, they moved their home games to Comiskey Park. And then, of course, he played in Wrigley Field in 1932 against the Cubs and had his famous did he or did he not point to the right center field bleachers and then hit the ball out there. There's a whole book written on that analyzes it. And, that whole thing. So Babe Ruth is the answer there. And finally, Branch Rickey, to the chagrin of us Cardinals fans, although I was too young at the time to worry about it, went to the Brooklyn Dodgers and immediately did his magic with them. Who had a good score that he wants to brag about?
It's good.
I would say if you're in double digits, it's good. Any nines?
Yeah, I did 9 or 10, I think.
10 is double digits. So
At 12.
if we want to declare a champ, you're our champion.
Pretty good quiz.
James, what'd you say? You had 12?
12?
But or 11. I had Madden down for that for the third.
Go ahead and give yourself 12.
That's a nice quiz.
No, with my butt, I got 6.
I had 8.
I got 7.
I gotta go, y'all. I gotta go.
Okay.
I'll have to go.
Anything else? We're about 12 minutes away. So if nothing else, we'll just sign off. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Richard, for hosting.
Another quarter. We'll talk again in October.
All right.
Thanks. Bye-bye.